Hello everybody, welcome to this course on VLSI design. I am Dr. Biplab Mandal from Tejpur University. Today we will discuss on sequential circuits. The objective of this lecture is to understand bistable circuits and to implement the concept to construct CMOS bistable elements like CMOS latch and CMOS resistors. Now digital logic circuits in a broad sense are classified as combinational logic circuits and sequential logic circuits. In case of combinational circuits, the output depends only on the current input of the circuit. So if the input of the circuit changes, the output of the circuit also changes. Output is determined by the Boolean functions of the input variables. So such circuits do not have any capability to store information, and these are also called non-regenerative circuits. On the contrary, we have another class of circuit, what we call the sequential circuits, where the output of the circuit not only depend on the present input but also on the previously applied input values. Rather, the circuit should know the previous history of the circuit. So such circuit has some capacity to remember the previous information, to remember the previous history of the circuit. For all practically useful system, the various logic operation should happen in a proper sequence. So sequential circuits have some sequence in it. A counter should count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It should not count randomly like 1, 5, 3, 2, 0, like that. If the operations are not done in a sequence, the system may become a chaotic system and the system fails. So sequential circuits are the necessary requirement for any practically useful system. What are the examples of sequential circuits? The examples are latches, flip-flops, counter, resistor, oscillator, and many more. Let us take the example of a counter. A 3-bit counter should count like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Now for the counter to count to the next state, it should remember what the previous state was. As for example, if the counter is in state 3 and now a clock pulse is given, then the counter will count 4. So that means the counter should know that the previous state is 3. So there is a requirement of memory of the system. The system should remember some information from the previously applied input. So a sequential circuit will have a combinational logic block in which the inputs are fed to it along with the previous output of the system. Previous output was stored in the memory element and it is given to the combinational logic block to produce the present output. So in addition to the combinational logic circuits, a sequential circuit has a memory element. So if we can create some device that can store information about the previous history of the circuit, we can construct a sequential circuit. Sequential circuits are also called regenerative circuit and are classified as bistable, monostable and astable circuits. The bistable circuits are very popular, are widely used, and we'll discuss in detail about the bistable concept and about the concept of bistability and various bistable circuits. So the memory element in the sequential circuit should store some information. The informations are in the form of zeros and one, because we know for digital circuits the information is stored in the form of either a 0 or a 1. Now the basic building block to store information are called latch. A latch is a level sensitive device where if the clock signal is high, the input D will be passed to the output, and when the clock signal is low, the output will be in the hold state. So when the clock goes high from 0 to 1, the value of D will be copied to the output of the latch. So in this case, D input is high, the same information will be sampled to the output of the latch. When the clock goes low, the value of D, when this clock is going low, the value of D at the falling edge of the clock will be held stable during the rest of the phase of the clock. In the next phase of the clock again, the clock is high, so input is also high, so output will also remain high. It can be seen that during the third clock pulse, the input D is low. So immediately the latch output will also goes low. So whenever the clock is high, output will follow the input, and when the clock goes low, the value of the input during the falling edge of the clock will be held stable at the output of the latch. This is the example of a positive latch. For a negative latch, reverse is the case. That means when the clock is low, during that time only the input will be passed to the output, and when the clock goes high, the latch will be in the hold mode. On the contrary, age triggered registers samples input to the output during the transition of the clock, either a 0 to 1 transition, which is called a positive age triggered, or during 1 to 0 transition, in which case the latch will be called a negative age triggered. For a positive age triggered register, input will be sampled to the output when the clock goes from 0 to 1, and for a negative age triggered register, the output will follow the input when the clock signal goes from 1 to 0. Now, in order to understand how a storage device stores information, let us take the example of a basic bistable element. Here, the output of an inverter is connected to the input of a second inverter, and the output of the second inverter is connected again to the input of the first inverter. The inverter 1 and 2 are identical in nature. This is the voltage transfer characteristics of the circuit. The trace 1 is for the voltage transfer characteristics of the inverter 1, and this is the voltage transfer characteristics of the inverter 2. Since the output of the inverter 1 acts as the input of the second inverter, so the curve is rotated. Now, these two curves intersect at 3 points, which says that the circuit has 3 stable operating points. However, only 2 of these 3 operating points are stable. The point C is an unstable operating point that cannot exist in practical. The operating point C will occur at a voltage corresponding to the switching threshold of the inverter, if we assume that the inverter transistors are identical in nature. So if we assume that the circuit starts operating at this point, and if the voltage, the switching threshold voltage, deviates or decreases from its value by small amount, this deviation may occur because of presence of noise interferences. So output will change to the VOH of the circuit. So the output, this value will now be VOH. This VOH will act as the input for the second inverter, and the output will get VOL. And this VOL will be again connected to the input of this output of this inverter will be VOH. So from this point, the circuit will hold its state of VOH here, VOH here it will be VOL, and same voltage VOL here. So a small deviation from the VTH due to noise, the output has changed, and this is because of the high gain of the inverter in this transition region. So because of high gain, the output will come back to any one of the stable operating point. If the voltage corresponding to this point decrease by small amount, it will go to this stable state. If it increases by this, the output may go to another stable state. So the circuit has only 2 stable operating points, A and B. If the circuit operates in any one of these operating points, it will preserve its state. The circuit has a capability to store information. We call the circuit a bistable element that can store either a 0 or a 1. This device serves as a memory. Now, bistable element of this kind is useful only if we can change the state from one operating point to other. If it stores 0, then there should be a provision to change the state from 0 to 1. And if it stores a value 1, then there should be a provision to change it from 1 to 0. If you cannot change the state from one operating point to other operating point, the system is not useful. Now, there are 2 mechanisms by which we can change the state of the circuit. One, by multiplexer based approach, that is very popular, and we'll discuss in detail about this method in the subsequent slides. Other method may be to apply a triggering signal at the input of the flip-flop to overpower the feedback loop. So one of the very common and useful technique for the construction of latch is the use of transmission gate based multiplexers. This is because of the simple design, and also they require a lesser number of transistors. For a negative latch, if the clock signal remains low, the input D will be passed to the output. So the output Q will copy the input D, and when the clock goes high, the latch will be in a hold state, or a stable value will be latched at the output of the device. Similarly, for a positive latch, input will be copied to the output as long as the clock remains high, and when the clock makes a transition from 1 to 0, a stable value will be latched at the output. A transmission gate based implementation of the positive latch is shown in this figure. When the clock signal is high, the lower TG, this will remain on and this will remain off. So that means the feedback loop will remain open because this transistor is off. And since this TG is on, so the input D will be passed to the output. So the latch is set to be in transparent mode where the input is passed to the output. When the clock signal remains 0, the lower TG will remain in off mode, the upper TG will turn on to make this feedback loop close, and the value of D at the falling edge of the clock will be held stable at the output of this TG. This figure shows an alternative method for implementing a positive latch. When the clock is high, the TG will remain on and the D will be copied to the output. If the clock is low, this TG will remain off, this TG will turn on, and the value of D will be preserved here, and the latch will be in the hold state. One of the very common practice to construct edge trigger device is to use master slave configuration. Here, two stages are cascaded that are activated with opposite clock phase. A negative edge trigger register is shown here, where a positive latch is used as a master and a slave stage is cascaded to this master stage, which is a negative latch. So a positive latch as a master is cascaded with a negative latch as the slave. When the clock signal is high, the master stage is transparent and the value of D will be passed to the Q. In this situation, when the clock is high, the slave stage is in hold state. When the clock makes a transition from 1 to 0, the master stage stops sampling of the input to the output and the slave state starts sampling the input to the output. So the Q becomes equal to Qm. Now, when the clock makes a transition from 1 to 0, the value stored at Qm is the value of D just before the clock makes a transition from 1 to 0. So once clock makes a transition from 1 to 0, the value of Q is latched by this master stage, and this value is now sampled to the output of the slave, since the slave stage is now in transparent mode because the clock signal is 0, and during this time the master stage remain in hold state. Since Qm is constant, we can say Q makes only one transition per cycle, so it is concluded that the value of Q is the value of the input D just before the falling edge of the clock, and hence this is called a negative edge triggered register. A transistor level implementation of the negative edge triggered register is shown in this figure. When clock is high, the transmission gate T1 is on and T2 is off. So the master stage is in transparent mode and the input D is copied to the output of the master stage Qm. Also, since T2 is off, the feedback loop is open. During this situation, since the clock is 0, so the T3 is off and T4 is on, so the slave stage is in hold mode. When clock makes a transition from 1 to 0, the master stage stops sampling the data and goes into a hold state. T1 will be off and T2 will be on. So the feedback loop is now closed here and this will be in the hold state. The slave state will now start sampling the value of Qm to the output of this register through this transmission gate T3. Because the clock is 0, the transmission gate T3 is on and the transmission gate T4 is off. So this feedback loop will be now open and the slave stage will be in transparent mode. So during the falling edge of the clock, the value of the input is presented at the output of the register, and that is why this is called a negative edge triggered register. Until now, it is assumed that the signal clock bar is exactly an inverted version of the clock. The clock bar signal is generally obtained by inverting the signal clock using an inverter. So till now we have assumed that the delay in obtaining the clock bar from the clock signal is 0, but this may not be always true. There are always a delay associated with the inverter. When the clock bar is not a perfect inversion of the signal clock, in that case the two signals overlap for a small duration of time. As it can be seen from this, the clock and the clock bar are overlapped for this period. This effect is called clock skew. If this is not taken care of, the circuit will malfunction. To understand the effect of clock skew, let us consider this positive master slave edge trigger resistor where NMOS only pass transistors are used in the construction of the master and slave stages. When the clock goes from 0 to 1, the master stage should stop sampling of the data because the clock, this will become 0 and this becomes 1. So this transistor turns off and this transistor turns on. So master stage should stay in a hold state when the clock makes a transition from 0 to 1. The data of node X is the data D after passing through this inverter just before the rising edge of the clock. Now when the clock is 1, the slave stage should start sampling of the data and the value of X is to be copied at the output of the Q. Now however, because of the presence of overlapping in the clocks, it may be noted that both clock and clock bar will remain high for a small duration of time, and during that period M1 and M3 both will remain in on condition. So that means Q is connected to the input during this period. This condition is called race condition, during which a wrong value of D may be presented to the output of the Q. Now this can be avoided by using, if we use two separate clocks, clock 1 and clock 2. This is called two-phase non-overlapping clock, where you can see there is a non-overlapping period between these two clocks. During this non-overlapping period, both the transistor M1 and M3 remains off and input D is isolated from the output Q, and the circuit is said to be in high impedance state. Next, the timing relationship between the input and the data is extremely important for correct operation of resistors. In this reference, the setup and hold times are two important parameters. The setup time is defined as the time before the rising edge of the clock during which the input should remain valid. If we consider a positive edge trigger resistor, so the resistor will be sensitive to rising edge of the clock. So before the clock makes a transition from 0 to 1, the amount of the duration of time during which the signal should remain valid is known as the setup time. So this is the amount of period during which input D should remain valid, and this is called the setup time. Similarly, after the rising edge of the clock, the input D also should remain valid for a certain amount of time, which is known as the hold time. So this is the amount of time during which the input D should remain valid for a correct value to be presented at the output. This is called the hold time. If the signal changes in between the setup and hold time, you may get timing errors. So it is essential for the resistor to maintain setup and hold time in order not to produce any erroneous results. Another important parameter is the propagation delay, that is defined as the time taken by the resistor to copy the input to the output. We have seen how mux-based approach can be used in the construction of bistable element. Multiplexer based approaches are the most effective one. Alternatively, triggering pulses can be used to switch the bistable element from one stable state to another. In this reference, let us consider the SR latch. The SR latch is NOR based, and the output of one of the NOR gate is connected to the input of the second NOR gate. Similarly, the output of the second NOR gate is connected to the input of the first NOR gate. This makes the two NOR gates connected in cross-coupled way. S and R constitute the externally applied triggering inputs. If S and R both are equal to 0, the circuit is exactly same as the cross-coupled inverter that preserves its one of the stable operating points. If S is made equal to 1 and R is equal to 0, since NOR gate with 1 at one of its inputs produces 0 at the output, so this will become 0 and 0 is connected here. R is also equal to 0, so Q equal to 1. This condition, when S is equal to 1 and R is equal to 0, results in the output of the latch as Q equal to 1 and Q bar is equal to 0 is called set condition. Similarly, if we make S is equal to 0 and R is equal to 1, from a simple analysis you can see that Q will become equal to 0 and Q bar will also become equal to 1, and this condition is called a reset condition. From this to state, if you change S and R both equal to 0, we'll see that the device holds its previous values, and that is why the condition S and R both equal to 0 is called the hold state, in which the latch preserves the previous output of the latch. If we make S and R both equal to 1, a contradiction arises where we can see that the Q and Q bar are not complementary to each other, and this condition is not allowed in case of a SR latch. A CMOS implementation of the SR latch is shown here. Let us see the behavior of the circuit when you apply the inputs. If S equal to 1 and R is equal to 0, both the transistor T1 and T2 will be on. This will cause the voltage of this node to drop to 0. So Q bar becomes equal to 0, and this is connected to the input of this. So this will remain off, and since R input is also 0, so T4 is also off. So the voltage level of this node will remain high. So when S is equal to 1, R is equal to 0, Q becomes equal to 1 and Q bar becomes equal to 0. This condition is called set condition. Now if we make the input S also equal to 0, let us see what happens. If S is equal to 0, the T1 is off, R is also equal to 0, so T4 is also off. In the previous state, since Q is equal to 1, so this transistor T2 will also remain on, and since this voltage is 0, so T3 will remain off. So T1, T4, T3 all are off, only T2 is on. This will ensure that Q bar to drop to 0. This is actually as the previous state, Q bar is 0, and since these two transistors are off, so this will remain at its high voltage. So that means as before, the Q will remain high and Q bar will remain 0. The latch is remembering its previous state. Let us take the reverse of this. If S is equal to 0 and R is equal to 1, in that case T1 and T2 both will remain off, and T3 and T4 both will remain on. So in this case, since both the transistor T1 and T2 are off, so Q bar will remain 1, and since T3 and T4 both are on, because R is 1 here, and since both the transistors are off, Q bar is high, so this is connected here, and this will get a logic 1 at its input, so this transistor is also on. Both the transistors are on, the voltage of this node will drop down to 0. So Q becomes equal to 0 and Q bar becomes 1, and this condition we call reset. When S is equal to 0, R is equal to 1, it resets the latch. From this state, if we make both S and R is equal to 0, we will see that the transistor T1 and T4 definitely will remain off. In addition to it, this transistor will remain off since Q is equal to 0 here, and T3 will remain on. So T1 and T2, both the transistors are off, Q bar will continue to be at high, and the voltage level of Q will continue to be 0. So again we can see that device remembers some previous history. It acts as a memory. From the state 1 S equal to 1 and R is equal to 0, or from the state S equal to 0 and R is equal to 1, if you make both the inputs S or R equal to 0, the device remembers the previous outputs and act as a memory device. Finally, if we apply S and R both equal to 1, from a simple analysis you can see that there is a contradiction, because S, Q and Q bar both becomes either 0 or 1. That cannot be acceptable, and that is why these inputs S and R both equal to 1 are not allowed in case of a SR latch. A pseudo-NMOS implementation of the SR latch is shown in this figure, where you can see that the pull-up network is replaced with PMOS transistor with the gate grounded. In the previous SR latch, there was no clock and the circuit was asynchronous in nature. And to make the circuit a synchronous one, a clock can be added. This is the configuration, the way we make clocked SR latch. Similarly, this is a clocked JK latch. I will not go into the detail of this, and this is left on the part of the students to implement them in CMOS form. Finally, the circuit shown here is a master-slave configuration of a JK S-trigger flip-flop. Here the master stage is activated by a clock, and the slave stage is activated by an inversion of the clock signal, the clock bar. The arrow here indicates that the device is a S-triggered flip-flop. With the clock high, if we apply J and K, the master stage produces the output. And in this situation, since the clock is low, the slave state remain in hold mode. And when the clock makes a transition from 1 to 0, the master stage stops sampling of the data, and the slave stage start sampling the data available at Q and Q bar, that is determined by the master stage. This is a negative S-triggered JK flip-flop, since the slave stage produces the output available at Q and Q bar determined by the master stage. Till now we have discussed about sequential circuit that are of the type of bistable device that can store either a 0 or a 1. Here I have shown a circuit that is also a sequential circuit, but the circuit doesn't have any stable state and is called a astable circuit. The circuit keeps on oscillating between either 0 or 1. A inverter is taken and the output of the inverter is connected to the input directly. This is the voltage transfer characteristics of the circuit. This curve represents the voltage transfer characteristics of the inverter, and for the feedback line, the straight line represents that VA is equal to VB. The two curves intersect at this point, so theoretically this is the stable operating point. However, it can be seen that the circuit can operate at this operating point for no time. A small voltage perturbation to VA, the input voltage, due to noise or interference, is amplified because of the high gain of the amplifier, and the output of the inverter becomes close to VOH. The VOH will now act as the input to the inverter and it will produce an output of VOL, maybe somewhere close to V2. From this point, the circuit keeps oscillating between 0 and VDD. Once the output of the inverter reaches VDD, this is connected through this feedback loop to the input. So now input is equal to VDD. The inverter will produce an output equal to VOL or 0. This is again connected to the input of the inverter. So the input is now equal to 0 and the output of the inverter will be VDD. Likewise, from this point, the inverter will oscillate between the two stable points 0 and VDD. Any odd number of inverter connected in this fashion in a circular loop actually will behave like a ring oscillator. And this kind of circuits are useful in generating on-chip clock signals. These are the references that are followed while making this lecture. One of them is Digital Integrated Circuits, a prospective design by Rebe, Chandrakasan and Nikolic. And the other one is CMOS Digital Integrated Circuits by Kang, Leblevich and Kim. Thank you.